Hi, my name is Jose Kishimoto-Tesh. I'm the chef owner of Shogun Sushi in Delmar, New York. Thank you for joining me today with our virtual cooking demo for the Fundraiser benefit on behalf of the South End Children's Cafe in Albany, New York. For this cooking demo, I wanted to explore some of the dishes of my childhood that my mom cooked for me and my brother. Today, we'll be looking at several dishes from the southern islands of Okinawa, Japan. It wasn't until I was much older that I could truly appreciate the love and care my mom had when she was cooking for us. Fond food memories last lifetimes because they impact all of our senses: taste, smell, touch, sound, and heart. I hope you enjoy this video. Let's start cooking. Amazuzuke are sweet pickled vegetables. Long before refrigeration, pickling was a means of preserving food across changing seasons. There are many different styles that my mom used to make. I remember loving these in particular because of the sweetness and refreshing crunch of the quick pickle. Learning how to make simple pickles is a game changer. You will always have fresh, ready-to-eat vegetables for every meal. Also, between the acidity and salt, it really helps cleanse the palate in between bites, and you can really savor your meal. So here we have mirin, rice wine vinegar, salt, sugar, chili pods, carrot, daikon, and cucumber. Let's start cutting. So we're going to take our rice wine vinegar, mirin, sugar, salt, and let this dissolve completely. And this will be our pickling liquid. Once the pickling liquid is otherwise pretty much clear, we're going to pour it into a jar. Now, because this is still hot, if you put a ball jar, seal it up while it's still really hot, and be very careful. Essentially, once this cools down, this will be airtight, and this will be good for several months with no problem, because this is basically all preserved in there. And then you can then use this as you need. So we're going to let this cool down first. Then we're going to go back to using this on the pickles. So we'll start by peeling the daikon. It's basically take a vegetable peeler and peel away from you. The daikon and carrots can be peeled. The English cucumber, you don't have to peel the skin off. The bitterness actually helps balance out the sweetness of the pickle. So for the cucumber, all we're going to do is cut it right down the center. Then we're going to cut it at an angle. Get it about a quarter-inch thick. You can use regular cucumbers. Just that with regular Kirby cucumbers, you'd want to core out the center and remove the excess seeds. With English cucumbers, you can leave the seed in. For the daikon, you're going to cut it into basically planks, quarter-inch thick planks. And little matchstick sticks. The carrot, same thing. This can be cut a little bit smaller, probably like an 1/8 of an inch. So you get like more of like strips. So once all the vegetables have been cut, we're going to add salt. And basically coat it thoroughly. what the salt does is it helps remove the excess liquid and allows the vegetables to start the osmosis process. So once this is all rinsed off and you have the vegetables sit in the pickling liquid, it then accepts and draws in the flavors into the vegetables. So right now, we just took the salt. We're gonna have this mixed thoroughly, and then we're gonna just basically let this rest for 15 to 30 minutes, and then rinse it off and drain the excess liquid out completely. So a half hour has passed now for the vegetables with the salt, and you can see how much liquid it's already pulled out. So the excess liquid. Now we're going to basically rinse this off and let it dry for another half hour, just to air dry. Alternatively, if you have a salad spinner, you can use that after you've basically rinsed off all the salt to basically pull out any of the additional excess liquid. And then your vegetables are ready to go. What we're going to do is take a plastic bag, a Ziploc. This is a gallon size. The one advantage of using a Ziploc is that you can then use a lot less liquid. So if you're pickling like a ball jar with you need a lot of liquid to basically fill that up, whereas with a Ziploc bag you can use the very minimal amount of liquid to pickle. We're going to basically take our fresh vegetables, carrot, cucumber, and daikon, put it in. Now the optional step is you can add chili pods. Basically, if you don't crush it up and just put the whole chili pods, it's kind of like adding like a whole black pepper. It adds a capsaicin, so it adds a little bit of heat. But if you want it to be completely mild, don't add these in. For this gallon bag, we're going to add basically, I think, 4 pods. Now we're going to take our pickling liquid that we made earlier. Put basically roughly a half cup in. And that's all you need, really. So as long as remove as much of the air as possible, and basically you're gonna make. This one we're going to add a little bit more, just to make sure that the liquid can go all over. So what I'm doing is basically rolling it so I got most of the air out, and as I reach the end, then pull the Ziploc, and then I can now flatten it, and the liquid is pretty much permeated throughout. So you're going to keep it like on one side. After an hour or so, then flip it onto the other side, and basically then the entire package has then been marinated. So give it a few hours, and then you can use it. This will be good for basically about a week or so. Liquid can be held for several weeks as well. So you can then have this ready to do the next 2 more batches of pickles. And this is the end result. This is the Amazuzuke sweet pickled vegetables after roughly 2 hours of pickling, and still has the fresh crunch. The salt really does help preserve the color of the cucumbers and just keep it that bright green. So what else can I say? It's simple and delicious. The Goya Chanpuru. When I was much younger, this was one of the dishes I absolutely hated. But I was taught to finish what was on my plate, and looking back now, I can enjoy and understand why my mom cooked this dish and what it means for the island of Okinawa. It's a classic dish across all the islander households because of the immense health benefits. It's great in lowering blood sugar levels for diabetics. The antioxidants also help lower the risk of heart disease. There are many ways to control the bitterness, but it makes it more palatable for kids. However, I do now enjoy the flavor, and I hope you do as well. So let's take the ingredients. So we have our bittermelon, our eggs, luncheon or spam meat, but if you're a vegetarian, you can substitute with tofu. We also have sliced onions, then our hondashi, which you can get in a smaller box, but this is basically the stock base for miso soup. And we have soy sauce, sake, and sugar. Okay, let's get started with the bittermelon first. When you go to the Asian market, they'll either sell it as a package of like 2 or 3, or you can buy it individually. It depends on the supermarket that you go to. But essentially, you treat this like you would with as a squash. So the best way to approach this is just basically cut it in half directly. And you're going to see that there's pith and seeds. You're going to take a spoon and scoop it out. This is where the majority of the bitterness is going to be. And then once it's scooped out, do both right now. Okay. All you're going to do is just cut it in a 45-degree angle. And the amazing thing about bittermelon is that it's a superfood. It's very high in vitamin C, vitamin A, folates. So it allows, between that and all the antioxidants that are in there, it really is very healthy for you. And that's basically it. And you can really just smell the bitterness, and there's a slight aromatic sweetness that comes from it, like almost like the citric acid. But then we're going to show you how to get rid of the bitterness from this and go from there. So with the Spam, I've already taken it out of the can, reserved a half of it for another day. And all you're doing with the Spam is just cutting it along, and we're just going to do like little thin strips so you can have it into the stir fry. That's it. So little sticks. You could do whatever shapes you want, but this is more than enough for that. Basically, the saltiness helps balance out the bitterness and the sweetness of the egg. So you're working with a lot of different flavors and balancing it out together. And yeah, that's all you need. And then we're gonna start bringing this to the stove and start cooking this then. So at this point, you can either cook in a wok, which adds a different type of flavor, or if you want to, you can use a non-stick pan. We're gonna add the Spam first. Because of the oil in the Spam, you don't have to add any other grease into the pan, because it'll all seep out into the pan. We're going to lightly brown caramelize the Spam. So as it's slightly caramelizing, we're going to add the onions. Let that caramelize as well. Then on the side, I just you can skip this step entirely, but if you want to get rid of the bitterness from the bittermelon, you can add it, basically blanch it for about 30 seconds. And the excess bitterness will come out of the pith and the skin and into the water, and then when you remove it, it'll reduce the bitterness by about half. After about 30 seconds, we're just going to let this drain on the side. At this point, now we can add the bittermelon. Next, we'll put the soy sauce, sake, bit of the sugar, and the hondashi. Get a bit of the caramelization. Since the bittermelon's already been blanched, it's already fully cooked. We're now basically just trying to reduce the liquid that's already in there. And then when it gets close to the end, we could then add our omelets, or the whipped eggs. We'll let that coat every inch. And let that cook thoroughly. At this point, you could also add additional salt and pepper to taste. But between everything else, the spam, there's a lot of salt. The hondashi that you put in adds a lot of umami and basically like the seaweed MSG. And the eggs add the sweetness along with the. And then once it's all been pretty much like absorbed and cooked, then you're pretty much all said and done. And there you have it. Plate of Goya Chanpuru. Simple but nutritious. And once you get used to the flavor, very delicious. Rafute, otherwise known as Okinawan braised pork belly, is one of the dishes that can be utilized in a number of ways. You can use this braised method for chicken, beef, or other pork cuts, but the classic way is with pork belly for a number of reasons. The way this dish is made, the fat becomes part of the braised liquid and acts like the French confit method. It was a means of preserving before the advent of refrigeration. Also, the braised method softens the rind and collagen of the pork, which has additional benefits for skin, hair, and blood. Other than that, this is essentially Asian-style bacon. The smell of this is a reminder of the numerous ways my mom would incorporate into other dishes such as stir-fries, soup noodles, although a simple bowl of rice with an egg is a delicious way to enjoy this as well. Let's take a look at the ingredients. Here we have 2 pounds of pork belly, but because of the time involved, you can easily do much more as this preserves well. For the stock, we use katsuobushi, which is preserved bonito flakes, and kombu. But if you don't have access to these 2 ingredients, you can easily use hondashi, which is a great substitute. Basically, just use water and the instant granules, and this will make a bonito stock. Next, we have our mori, which is an indigenous distilled rice liquor from the island. You can substitute with sake or a nice dry white wine such as Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay. Then the next ingredient we have is Okinawan black sugar, which is unrefined cane sugar. In this case, locally, you can find Taiwanese black sugar in the local Asian market. However, if you can't find this, you can substitute with brown sugar, but there is a slight difference. Black sugar is, first of all, not as sweet. Also, brown sugar, ironically, is processed white sugar that had its molasses removed, then mixed back in, so it is a highly processed sugar. Then, of course, we have our soy sauce and knob of ginger. Okay, let's get this started, and we'll start with the stock first. So here we have our 6 cups of water. We're just going to add our kombu, seaweed, and our katsuobushi flakes. And then just bring this up to a boil and let it simmer for about 30 minutes. And that's basically it for the stock base. So now we have our stock. You can see that the seaweed kombu has basically expanded 3 times the original size since we put it. So this has been simmering for half hour. Now we're going to just strain it out. And there we go. You have basically dashi stock, so homemade stock. This you can use as a base for miso soup. The seaweed itself, you can either throw it out or you can cut it up and then marinate it, so you have basically pickled seaweed. Other than that, pretty much this is all the flavor has been seeped into the stock, so most of the time this is actually thrown out, but to each their own. So right now I have a hot wok. If you don't have a wok, you can use a saute pan. However, a wok adds a nice sear, so right now we're just heating up the wok until it reaches basically a smoke point. Then you're going to put a little bit of oil to help it sear. And we're going to take our pork belly, skin side down, and basically just let it sear. You're basically tying out the collagen and doing a slight bit of browning. This effect adds the smokiness, and the wok, the flavor of the wakai is added into the pork. You're looking for a slight burn, basically browning, and then that's basically it. Now we're gonna add cold water. And basically bring this to a boil. What this does, it helps remove any undesirable smells and flavors from the pork. So it's basically another way of basically rinsing out the pork, and then that way it's ready for the to have the flavor from the stock and from the base. Now that this has been brought to a boil, we're going to bring it down to a simmer and let it simmer for about a half hour before we remove it out of the liquid, and then we'll mix it all together into the to the braised liquid. So after a half hour, we're going to now remove it. This is essentially the protein out here, the scum. We're trying to basically remove it out of the meat, and should be ready. Now we're going to set this aside and then get the rest of our braised liquid all set then. For our braised liquid, we've already put in our soy sauce, the awamori, and Okinawan black sugar. Then for the ginger, all we're looking to do is basically expose the membrane and keep it whole, so that way we can remove it. But this allows the ginger to seep into the braised liquid. Then after that, we're going to add the stock back in. And then put our pork belly, and then you basically just want enough liquids, that way it covers the majority of the top. And this is now going back onto the stove. Bring it up to a boil, then we're going to let it simmer for about 2.5 hours with the lid on, so that way the pressure from the lid allows it to cook through the rind, the collagen, and the pork belly, and really soften up the meat in there, so it's basically unctuous, melt in your mouth mouthfeel. So after the rafute cools down in the cooler, we separated the braised liquid and gelatin, and now you're left with the the braised pork belly. So at this point, you can either cut it into the size that you want. Normally, like for ramen, you're going to do like long strips, and then when it's chilled, it's a lot easier to cut nice thin strips. So these are the rafute strips that you would put on like a ramen or a Okinawa soba. Then if you wanted to do a different style cut, you can do little cubes. And this style little cubes would be like perfect for either a stir fry or with basically with vegetables, like steamed vegetables, and then over rice. And pretty much this is versatile for a lot of different things. So make sure you save the braised liquid, and this will be what you use to reheat the Rafute. So for the Rafute, we're going to take the reserve liquid that's now become gelatin, and the excess fat that was basically you're using this to revive the stock, and use the fat to help sear the pork belly. And let that melt a little bit. Then we're going to add our sliced pork belly into the pan to basically reheat and sear at this point. Let the liquid, as it reduces, it'll let you know when it's pretty much ready. At this point, if you wanted to add a little bit more umami, you could add a little bit more soy sauce. The liquid is now reduced by half already. And that's good. There we have it. So we're going to take this out of the pan, put it onto the plate. I'm going to take the reserve liquid, pour it right on top, because that's basically the stock and the jus from the braise. And there you go. A simple Rafute dish on top of rice. Long before bakeries in every corner, my earliest memories as a child was smelling delicious sugar and fried oil all over my house. Sata Andagi is an Okinawan fried sweet donut. You'll find a vendor at every major holiday festival on the island. I remember being so excited and getting yelled at by my mom because I was burning the top of my mouth while I was trying to sneak freshly fried donuts. I know you'll enjoy these definitely. So let's look at the ingredients. For the wet ingredients, we have large eggs, condensed milk, vanilla extract. For the dry ingredients, we have all-purpose flour, sugar, baking powder, and salt. Let's start mixing these. In a large bowl, we're going to combine all the dry ingredients, starting with the flour, sugar, salt, and baking powder. We're going to take the whisk and gently mix everything until it is thoroughly mixed. Next, we're going to take the eggs and beat them lightly until they are frothy. Once they're frothy, we're going to add the vanilla extract. Then mix in the condensed milk. Now, condensed milk is a Hawaiian style because islands and the limitations of dairy. This was actually the Okinawans that lived on Hawaii introduced this style with, so you can use fresh milk as well, but the condensed milk adds an additional sweetness that's similar to marzipan. Once this is mixed well, we're going to then add this to dry in stages. Okay. So I'm going to take the dry, start a little well, and then mix until the majority of the liquid has been absorbed into the initial flour. Now we're going to add the remainder of the liquid, and then use a spatula to basically fold this all together until it's mixed thoroughly into a dough. So to make it easier, you can actually mix this by hand as well. It just gets really sticky on your hands. Or you can use a dough hook if you have a KitchenAid. So after you thoroughly mix it, this will appear like a very sticky pasta dough. Now, if you're when you're handling this, trick I would do is just basically lightly dab your fingers with oil, and then it'll basically make it non-stick. Now, we're going to take half the batch and then wrap it up. The purpose of this is you want to let the dough rest for about an hour or so. So just take half the dough, press it down, and just wrap it up, and then you can refrigerate it. Now the good thing about this dough is you can keep it for several days in the refrigerator as long as it's wrapped up nicely, and then fry off the donuts when you're ready. So the small batch yields roughly about 20 donuts. And I made a big batch today, so this is actually about like 40 donuts or so. So with these, this goes right in the fridge and let it rest for about an hour or so before you fry them. So this dough is actually rested for 24 hours already, but it's ready to go. And unwrap it. So the oil is at 325 degrees Fahrenheit, and right now the oil is clear because we just cleaned the fryer, and it's actually how our tempura fryer always looks, pretty much crystal clear for tempura and desserts. We're going to use a purple scoop, which is 0.75 ounces. So this will basically give me a golf ball size scoop. Right down. Now, when you pop it out, it's going to have a texture. You don't have to smooth this out. This is actually what gives the Andagi a distinct look. Now, if you were doing this traditionally, what they would do is basically wet their hands. Then you can work with the dough. Basically, make little logs, and then basically pinch out. And then make little balls, and then drop it in. So we're going to do several with the scoop, and then come back to this. This will be about 7 to 10 minutes cook time. So as you can see, the dough, initially when you drop it into the oil, it goes to the bottom. As it starts floating, that gives you a sign of like what stage it's in. And the purpose of not smoothing out completely the ball is that way when it's time to, once one side is cooked, it makes it easier for the after the expansion for the the Andagi balls to basically stay flipped over and not keep rolling if they are a complete circle. Now, I'm using a deep fryer, but you can use a stovetop oven with a tail pot. You're going to need about 3 to 4 cups of oil, but you're only going to be able to do maybe 4 to 5 donut balls at a time if you do it that way. And then what I'm doing right now, if you notice, I'm also have a very steady hand, but the closer you drop it to the oil, then there's no splattering. So if you try to drop, if you're afraid of the oil and you drop it from a high, the higher you drop the ball, the more it'll basically ricochet and then splatter. So to be very mindful when you're doing this. To be safe. If you want, you could wear a glove, and then that'll help protect against any splatter. So now you can see how it's cooking on one side. Basically going to start flipping these over, and then right now I'm using a chopstick. That's actually the household tongs that they have, and you're basically looking for the even browning. One side, if the other side's not completely browned, then we're going to wait. So about 7 to 10 minutes, depends on the size. That's basically just the average. And the lighter the oil, it takes longer for it to darken. If you have dark oil, it's going to brown faster, and then you're going to end up. What's going to end up happening is you're going to think that it's done, but it's going to be raw in the center. So that's why having clean oil is very important when working with desserts, especially donuts. And then right now you're looking to see if it's evenly browned on both sides. Once that's the case, then the andagi is pretty much ready, and then we can then use a toothpick or a skewer to basically test it. Once it's perfectly brown, you can use a toothpick. If it comes out clean, that means it's ready. And right now I have set up a rack with paper towel to basically drain off the excess. And then once it comes out of the fryer, you want to consume this the same day. Give it a few minutes to let it cool down, or else you're going to burn your mouth. But otherwise, it's usually, as long as you're in the airtight container, it's good for up to 2 to 3 days. And then after that, it's but best enjoyed day of, even right now while hot. And here we go, andagi, still nice and hot. Really crunchy on the outside, and that's basically what you're looking for. The immense amount of crunch and just the soft pillowness. It's very dense, almost like a cake donut, but the crunch on the outside gives it that wonderful texture, and then the condensed milk gives it more of a marzipan aftertaste. So very rich and dense. Enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this cooking demo. Thank you again for donating and contributing to the South End Children's Cafe and their mission to address food insecurity for many families in Albany. As part of your continued support, I'll be releasing another set of cooking demos in April with the theme of Taste of Philippines, a dedication to my heritage on my father's side of the family. Hope you can join us and let me know what you think. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or email me at shogunofdelmar@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed seeing something different and are able to taste these delicious foods from the island of Okinawa. Thank you again. See you.